Hello and welcome everyone to the third episode of We Scale Impact. Today we have Jagdeep Gambir with me, who is joining us from Hyderabad. Jagdeep, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to add something. All right. Great. Jagdeep, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So I'll start with a quick introduction to VScale Impact and this conversation. VScale Impact is a global consulting organization founded by entrepreneurs who have built and scaled businesses in the past and now work with funders and innovators in emerging markets to help them scale their impact. VScale Impact has launched this series called Scale and Impact. Each month, we invite a funder or an innovator to discuss their experience while scaling impact, goals, challenges, and the best practices. Every episode, we find some good takeaways to help innovators at any stage of their impactful journey to scale more efficiently. In our first episode, we spoke with Dr. Ritu Verma from Ankur Capital, I think, who's also one of your investors. And she shared with us her journey investing in over 20 companies in various sectors. You can watch that on YouTube on our channel. And the second conversation we had was with Carolina Kwok from Grand Challenges Canada. Again, she shared her views on what funders look for when they make these funding decisions and what are the do's and don'ts that innovators should do. Again, this is available on the YouTube page. For those of you who are joining for the first time, I'm Ashwin Naik. I'm one of the founding partners at VScale Impact, based in India. And today we are delighted to have Jagdeep Gambir from Karma Healthcare, a pioneer in primary care. I've known Jagdeep for many years, and Jagdeep has a very unique background. He graduated from one of the premier business schools in India, Indian School of Business, and I believe was working at Goldman Sachs before his passion for primary care pulled him into the villages of Rajasthan. As you know, Karma Healthcare has set up clinics across various places in North India, particularly where there are doctor shortages. Welcome, Jagdeep, and maybe we can start with a quick introduction to your background and also what Karma is doing and where you are today.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ashwin, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be a part, of this series. So let me give a quick introduction about what we do at Karma Healthcare. Karma Healthcare is an impact, first startup, where our mission is to improve access to primary healthcare in rural and semi-urban areas. As all of us know, and many of us, already are aware that, there is a huge shortage of access of qualified doctors in largely, across India as well, but more so in rural and semi-urban area. And 70% of India lives in rural areas. So our mission is to enable access to primary care in these areas. We do this by operating e-doctor clinics, which are nurse-assisted telemedicine clinics, wherein we open these clinics in rural areas where the nurse will facilitate a video consultation between a patient and a range of specialist doctors which are available, and medicines and diagnostics are provided at the clinic itself. So, we have been doing this for about now 6 years. So I don't think we are maybe not a startup anymore, but yeah, we're doing this for about 6 years. That's a short bit about ourselves.
Great. Perfect. Jagdeep, so maybe we can start our conversation from a few years before, right? So when in the early stages of Karma and particularly before COVID-19, you were already on a trajectory to grow. You were, like you said, you were already at 25 clinics, and that itself is a big number. So what was the journey of scaling like during that period, and what was the key sort of experience that you can share?
Yeah, so again, for the initial first few years, right, I think when we started, we were initially very cognizant of the fact that, enabling access and enabling or having a model of primary healthcare in rural and semi-urban areas, we were aware that, this has been tried before. Multiple people have tried various options of, how do you improve primary healthcare, especially on the private sector where, mostly we operate. So, wanted to, our initial first few years were focusing on creating the right model. So, our model, which is on nurse-assisted telemedicine, in which the nurse actually is not outsourced. So the nurse is actually an employee of the organization, thereby enabling us for better, control and quality parameters. So that was the first, piece, that we kind of spent in the model. Then as, we kind of moved along, we also realized that given that, we are a technology-enabled organization as well as impact being the focus, right? Systems that actually measure impact as well as are able to identify, and help us focus on specific areas of impact were really critical. So, a lot of our technology building has actually focused on creating quality assurance protocol systems, right? And not just in technology, actually otherwise as well, wherein we kind of were able to, or have been able to quantify the impact that we create with a fairly good amount of quality that we are able to give to the patient. So that were kind of the first, 2-3 things. And then, as like with any startup, product market fits, right? Initial customer validations, right? And those things were there, proving unit economics. Again, financing, sustainable primary healthcare model is very difficult. So, we wanted to clearly make sure that, we kind of are really clear on how we will finance it, being more realistic about it, right? Were kind of the first 3-4 key areas that we kind of looked at in the, as we started.
And if I recall correctly, Jagdeep, your primary focus in the early years was to build the infrastructure, the platform, the software, and the protocols and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about how that helped when you were ready to scale?
Yeah, again, as you rightly pointed out, right? I think, and as we are now witnessing scale also in a post-COVID, situation as well, right? And how do you ensure quality at scale? Is especially in a primary care setup when there are so many doctors and different kinds of patients, right? That is where I think technology plays a key role, right? So any doctor consultation that happens on our system, how much time a doctor is taking, what is the quality of the prescription that is being generated, what are the various checks and balances, and when should we refer a patient, what is the critical patient that should not be treated on a online platform, right? All those were built in the first 2 to 3, 4 years, right? And the second was more operational challenges, right? Like how do you ensure that sufficient number of medicines are provided at the clinics, right? And all of those things were built in the initial first 2-3 years when we were fairly small scale, 4, 5, 6 clinics, right? Obviously the technology still kind of continues to grow and evolve, but that has been the base, right, on which we have been able to go ahead and scale on that, right? And our understanding of the customer, right, on what is the price point, how much should we price for a service, what are the range of services that we are able to provide, were kind of part of that package.
Great, great. And you mentioned post-COVID, but going back a year, did things change drastically for you in the last 1 year in terms of operation and your own ambition?
Not in terms of ambition, but in terms of operations, yes. I think, I mean, for us, the COVID journey was that we were actually not expecting COVID to come to rural India, right, in wave 1 as quickly. And, this is a story I kind of I've shared, with multiple people. We have clinics around Bhilwara district in Rajasthan, which actually became one of the first COVID hotspots. And, suddenly we kind of got calls from our nurses, right, that there are, multiple, COVID positives, suspected positive cases in the clinics, right? And because at that time with the panic, we had to immediately close our clinics because of, we were also sure about the safety, for the nurses and, what it was going to take. So we had to actually pivot to a contactless consultation as well. Right, and what we are now able to do is that we now can provide a digital system, right? So earlier we had a lot of physical clinics, right, but now we also are able to provide consultation to the same patients in the community through an online mobile phone as well, or an online mobile app as well. This is like any telemedicine app that we go through, but the benefit for us is that the patient journey actually is much more comprehensive. Many people actually come and consult in the clinic for the first time, and they do their repeat prescriptions over the app. So with overall the healthcare services become comprehensive. And and I think we have been able to also serve multiple patients through the home-based care model that we have started. So earlier, while we were largely physical, now we have technology capabilities to actually even provide home-based consultation to many patients that we are actually doing with for many COVID patients as well who are currently under treatment.
Great, great. One of the questions that has come in, Jagdeep, and I know you are very passionate about this, is that as organizations evolve, you mentioned three different trajectories. One is when you scaled from 4 clinics to 25 clinics. The second, you are now saying we went from physical to virtual, and then also more of technology enabled than dependent. So, how did the organizational culture change during these transitions?
I mean, it's a great question, something that we kind of tackle all the time, and not sure that we have all the answers right to this problem to this question. But yes, I think culture, especially in an organization that kind of rapidly changes its trajectory, changes, and before we could realize, we are seeing some lead and lag indicators around this. But yeah, when we were 4 or 5 clinics, it was very very, very intense, right? We were a small team, and everyone was kind of very, very involved. There were not too many processes. A lot of things were kind of done because the vision, because there are only 4 or 5 people, right? So as a founder, I was also had much more time to interact with all of them. So the vision clarity was much more, right, when we were kind of doing this. Now now we have about 100 plus people, part time and full time people combined. Right, I think there is more structure. There are more processes that are in place. Some people who joined us earlier were resistant that we now need to have more processes built in place. But that is something that has been there, and we therefore have to kind of consciously make sure, and not something that we do very well, but consciously make sure that everyone in the organization, across the board is kind of tuned into the vision of the organization, especially the mission and on what we are kind of working and what our vision is. But yeah, it has evolved, and we are also evolving. But I think it's always a learning. So now, as we are kind of moving from 25 to higher number of clinics, again there will be a journey that will come in.
Yeah, if we can just step back a little on this topic and just look at your journey: 4 clinics, 25 clinics, now going to 100. What does scale mean for you and for Karma Healthcare? Is it just number of clinics, or is there some other sort of metric that you chase?
I mean, two ways, right, that we kind of look at. One is a geography, so linear scale, right? So how many number of clinics, and hence with the number of clinics, number of patients that we are able to reach out to, right? And now with our technology systems, while we have our own clinics, but there are many other organizations who actually use our technology system to provide healthcare, right, into this, right? So that is something that is obviously a key scale. We also kind of bifurcate that into not just the total number of patients that we have seen, but also how many women and children we have been able to impact, right? So it's kind of bifurcated down into segments of population that are of interest to us, right, in a way. The other way is to see that while geographical scale is great, but how do you actually increase the breadth of the scale, right? So are we becoming more comprehensive in terms of our service provisioning, right? Because many patients who how do you define primary care, right? And we have 4 kinds of specialties, but can we actually integrate other services, right, into our offerings, whether it is mental health, whether it is non-communicable diseases, right, whether it is providing more faster delivery of medicines and so on and so forth. So we kind of look at scale in two ways, right? One is the geographical scale, right? But then within the geographical as well, as I mentioned, you're right, it's not just the total number of people, but total number of people who actually needed we needed to what we can provide to them.
Great. Thank you, Jagdeep. I think there's an interesting question again related to what you just said, which is, there are so many online consultation platforms now. And, you've sort of moved yourself from the rural health, I will go to the place where there is nobody. Suddenly, you are saying anybody can use this model online. So the question really is, how do you differentiate yourself from the others who are providing similar options?
Yeah. Again, our bread and butter and the key specialization or focus has been on assisted care, right? So what yes, as it is rightly pointed out, I think there are multiples, and especially in a post-COVID world, there are so many technology platforms which are available out there, and thankfully I think technology has actually become a commodity, or technology platforms for teleconsults have become a commodity, right? So there is no differentiation out there, but again, our key focus is to actually create this physical network, especially in the areas of rural and semi-urban where we work. I think just by providing technology, if this problem had to be solved, it would have been solved many years ago, right? Our key focus is that we have physical deployments wherein we take care of the end-to-end delivery system, right? Whether it is the quality of the nurse to the quality of the doctors to the medicines and so on and so forth, and that is where we kind of are differentiated in terms of the quality, actually the physical assets, or the physical clinics that we have in this. While there is a non-assisted care as well, and there is actually not much difference between, while ours is currently free, but beyond that there is not much of a difference on the technology capabilities. But our focus is actually on the on the physical nurse-assisted model, because I think just pure online models probably won't be able to solve the problems in of primary care in rural areas where we.
Yeah. No, I think that's, in a way, that is a model that I also love, because you need somebody closer to you who can be your primary care provider, and the primary care provider doesn't have to be a doctor, right? It can be a nurse, it can be a trained technician, it can be anybody, and then you have technology to support them with the expertise, I think, which is ideal, because the cost structure works, social environment for people to, I mean, no doctor is going to go and stay in a village. That's not happening. Even tier 2, tier 3, we're finding it difficult. So I think this is a great model, and as long as people accept that consulting a doctor online is viable and feasible, which has now happened because of COVID, I think it's a great step. Yeah. So just going back to this entire journey, I know COVID is sort of an outlier, but even looking back at your from inception till now, what are the 2 or 3 things that you can share about scaling that worked for you, with some specific examples, if you can share?
I think very initially, I think one of the things we have done is to be I mean, it was initially bootstrapped, right? So even before we started to raise any amount of capital, our idea was that one has to put the skin in the game, right, to be able to convince an external person to kind of put in the money. So that was one of the things we did, right? So we put in, I put in whatever money I had, right, to into this before raising any kind of capital. And also wanted to be sure that before we take others' money, which is also has a lot of emotional pressures, right, coming along with that, right, we were a little bit clear. I mean, you can never be 100% clear, but a little bit clear of what we want to achieve, right? So that was one thing that we were able to do, right? The other thing that we have now realized and over the last 2-3 years is that not one single form of capital will be sufficient for us, especially we are kind of in this whole space of primary care and financing. This is the problem. So we have very quickly diversified our financing options, not relying on a single source of funding or single type of funding as well. And that has actually served us very well and kind of also has made the organization a little more resilient, right? With the churn that kind of comes along.
That's very interesting. So you're saying that the two elements was sort of being deliberate in terms of who to bring on board in the first place, because you don't want the wrong kind of pressures. And then you also went ahead and said that I don't want to be reliant on one type of capital. How can I diversify that? So you have grants, you have CSR, and you also have equity, which is sort of playing.
Also debt.
Also debt, yeah. Great. I think that's a big advantage, and a lot of people will be interested to learn more. But there's also one, Siddharth is asking a very fundamental question, going back to your journey. When did you know that you are ready to scale, right? Obviously, you were doing early experiments, trying to validate the model. What are the parameters to keep in mind before scaling, and also figuring out when is it time to scale?
I actually don't know. I don't have a very clear answer. It's a very thought-provoking question. But let me say what my initial thoughts are. I think there will be external stakeholders, right, who will be willing to validate, right? So when we were at 4 or 5 clinics, when we decided initially to take in money, right, to actually scale, it was when we had initial level of customer validations. We felt okay with a few number of people who were coming in and being accepted, and be satisfied with the services they were giving. Now, when in a post-COVID world where there is so much of demand for scaling up our thing, is we actually get a lot of calls or requests or proposals from various other people who are actually demanding a service like ours, right? And I think that kind of gives us a signal that the external world or the externalities want us to scale. And then it's our job to kind of build in organizational capabilities to be able to do that, right? So that was how we kind of looked at. And the second one was that, are our systems and processes ready, right? So, that we were 25 clinics now. If the plan is to go to 100 clinics, right, do we have enough technology to be able to support it? Because it's a very different technology system that will be used for 25 versus for 100, right? And that is something that we have been building on that, yeah.
Right. So you're saying one is the validation from the customers or clients is the indicator that there is more demand than you can satisfy. So that's the trigger for scale. But the second is making sure all the infrastructure, the scaffolding is in place before you scale up. Yeah, I think a related question is, how has teleconsultation, which is free of physical interaction, been received by patients, particularly in your regions? And also, what kind of patient satisfaction that you see given this new mode?
Again, so this is a question we get asked very, very often, right? And my take is this, right? At the end of the day, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the end consumer, right, who currently is even okay to go to an informal provider, maybe very well knowing, in most cases that this person is an informal provider, right? As long as the service that is being provided to the patient is being done with a fair bit of compassion and a quality, I think people are completely agnostic to the mode of the consultation, whether it is provided by a nurse or a doctor, whether it is online, offline, or in any, or even in many cases over a WhatsApp, as I think traditionally urban India kind of does, right? So I think the key indicator of patient satisfaction is largely the quality of time that the doctor in many cases is able to do that, and for cases where we are able to do, I think we are reporting satisfaction patients, because we take a lot of feedback of more than 90%, right, of people who come to our clinic and say I'm satisfied with the service, including pricing and everything everything else, right? So I think what I would like to say is that it really depends on how compassionate the service actually is provided, and that's I think what is the key thing. So in centers where we don't do this very well often, right, we have fairly poor satisfaction. But in centers where we do this, people are waiting for an online consultant. They don't want a physical doctor to consult, right? So there is a difference.
Hmm. Also, does it allow you to expand the scope of services compared to what was the limit earlier? Like do customers see that as a added advantage now?
Yeah, I mean, most of the patients, again, especially in rural areas where we operate, um, you know, our key USP in the eyes of the customer, what is the key puller? While once they come in, they obviously will take all kinds of services. Is also a lot on specialist consults, right? Especially pediatrics, gynecology, internal medicine, right? Which is not available in in a primary care setup, even in a government hospital, right? If they were to go to. So that is something, a key differentiator that people are able to see, right? And so that is what kind of. So this kind of enables us to provide multiple kinds of services, right, through the same clinic, right?
Hmm. Great. No, I think these are important learnings, and given that we will enter this hybrid world, hopefully this will become the norm rather than the exception. Now, another question, Jagdeep. While you were scaling up your organization and looking at going to multiple geographies, now I see that you're also entering southern part of India. Uh, what kind of support you got from either your investors or advisors on thinking through some of these challenges that you're mentioning, or some of these opportunities that came your way?
Yeah. No, I think we have been fortunate, to have, many people, and whether it is investors, grant makers, individuals, right, including yourself, right, who have mentored us in our journey. And I think, the key area of support that one or two that I can list out is, one is that, for us to open and networks, right, when we are scaling up, let's say in a place in right now in south, or in a new state, having access to people who are already in that place, or through networks, is something that has been very critical, right? And the other is just to thinking about scaling, right? As a first time entrepreneur that we at times, there are blind spots, right, that everyone has, right? Getting mentorship, getting support from people, committed to the cause, but can kind of show you the mirror, which does not feel very good when it comes, but in the long run, is something that we have been blessed with, right, in a way. And thankfully, most of our of the people who have supported us have been very committed throughout our journey. So primary healthcare has a lots of challenges, right? But everyone who has initially been supported us has stuck around, right? Which is again a sign that people kind of like that this is a cause that will take a long time to be solved, and everyone is kind of very committed to it.
Yeah. Two things that I remember from our earlier conversation, which was very unique for me, was one was you were always asking the question, should we do this just because there is an opportunity, right? Because when you're growing, so many people approach you. Can you talk a little bit more about how you said no to some of these opportunities?
Again, for us, and this is a problem, or this is a key feature in any technology led business, right? So mission drift, it has been a key challenge, right? Especially as an organization on the social impact space, right, wherein you could always drift to being completely commercial, or being drift to being a complete non-profit, right? And this is a very, very difficult balance to be able to do that. And we have been therefore been very clear of especially on the commercial technology side, of what scale could mean, right? But that is not a kind of scale that we wanted, right? In a way. And we have after much deliberation, and it looks good as well, because you you are suddenly having so much revenue coming in. So we had opportunities to go international, through our software only or technology only platforms. Would we have stuck out, and we have kind of said no. To many. For us, the answer is very clear, right? Whatever scaling up we do is the end consumer that will actually use the service, is he or she within our target range, at this stage, right? And that has kind of been our idea. And it becomes very unpopular, when you have to deny revenue, but that's.
Yeah, is there sort of internal conflict within the organization on this topic, or
Now not, right? Initially there was, right? But I think we have now crossed that journey, right? And we have actually even solved for mission drift, through internal processes, whether it is communications to our external stakeholders, whether it is the board members, internal people, right? So now, because we have now not like a 6 months old startup, and there is a history that is now sorted. But yeah, initially this was a constant tension, and we were ourselves wondering of which way one should go to. But I think we have now outgrown that problem, right?
right? Yeah. The other thing, Jagdeep, that I remember from our conversation was your conscious attempt to sort of build leadership at all levels, right? And given, there are two challenges there. One, talent itself is limited in the geographies that you operate out of. But second is, how do we then build enough leadership at all levels? Can you talk a little bit about how that has played a role in your scaling journey?
Yeah, I mean, as we have already discussed it offline on multiple challenges, right? I think if we want to be community, I mean, because ours is a physical clinic operations where we have to actually constantly engage with the community, right? And because it's a service delivery organization, there are multiple people who actually will be facing the customers, and we also be involved in the scaling up. This is a key challenge, and as you rightly pointed out, having enough people who are kind of buying into your vision, right? Also with a limited number of financial compensation which is available, for the work we do, is the challenge. But I think over time, we have been able to hold on to people who are in the organization, right, and nurture them, train them to be able to handle and scale up, right? So there are many people within the organizations who joined us as nurses are now managers at various levels. So we are now actually constantly looking at promoting people from internally up the ladder, right, and not always looking at hiring people on a lateral role. Although there are still certain roles that cannot be directly promoted internally. So we have to keep that balance. But especially on the community side and on the culture side, I think there is always been a key focus to actually promote folks, right? And it is a jump for many of them, but that's when people kind of stick to us in the long run.
So what you're saying is one of the key learnings is to figure out how do you promote from within, and hopefully that will help put a career path for individuals in your organization, and of course they will stay longer in that sense. So just shifting gears a little bit, hopefully after the vaccination is over, markets will open and we'll all get back to our previous lives. Now, what is it that, assuming that money was not an issue going forward, what would be one area that you think you would like to invest, which will help you scale even further? What is holding you back now?
So, one area or one key kind of a critical element of service delivery, which we are lacking and, have been lacking, it's actually a capital issue, is building a referral system, right? So while we have built a primary care system and, it has its own journey and, people are able to take these services. but about 10 to 15% of our patients would be referred out from our clinic to a secondary or a tertiary care provider or a lab. Right now, that is a key gap in the system, especially with the geographical scale that we have. Is that right now we are actually asking people to go to any provider that they kind of meet to. Right. So our key focus is to actually build a referral system wherein we can digitally refer a patient and also take a referral back once the patient has actually went to a secondary or tertiary care facility, to see if there is any follow-up that is required at a primary care end. Right. I think for our impact to be completed, closing that loop between the primary care and the secondary care model is something that we are guilty of not being done, not having done that. But that is something which is in my mind. But this, because it's a geographical, we are now present in multiple states, does require a significant amount of capital. That is something that we are targeting to be able to do that. It also helps the overall impact that we create.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, and I wonder if that is something that organizations like yours should do, or any organization should try to build this downwards and upward linkage, or should there be more collaborative linkages between different organizations?
I mean, we are okay, but there is, that's one of the problems in primary care, is that the ecosystem, especially in at the geographical level, is not limited. I mean, if there was an organization who was helping us, with the referrals, we have not done this for the last 6 years. We would be happy to kind of participate, and collaborate with that. But that's the challenge, that we are unable to find organizations in the geographical areas, because deep down where we work. So a lot of heavy lifting has to be done by us, right? And that kind of also limits the scaling possibility in a way, with the lack of the ecosystem out there. So yeah, I mean, why we want to do this now is because we see many patients coming up to our clinic. Some people, some mortality as well, that we have seen across our centers because of this, and this is a problem that needs to be solved. So we are not fixated with the idea that only we have to solve, but this is a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. This is a problem. If somebody else solves it, then you can possibly piggyback on it. And another challenge that we were discussing earlier on is lots of online portals, lots of teleconsultation options, lots of clinics have focused largely on the medicine part of it, the teleconsultation plus prescription. How can I get access to specialists? And little attention is paid to patient education or patient awareness. I know you guys do a lot of these activities. Can you talk a little bit about how that is not only something good to do, but also sort of integral to your growth as well?
Yeah, I mean, and also again, we've been guilty of not doing it initially. So if we were to go back in time, something that we would do this earlier as well. Again, I think one of the demand generation, or awareness, as you kind of put it, is a key component of any service delivery organization. And when we started out, we also felt that here is a great clinic, asset light, no in geographic competition. So as soon as we open a clinic, everyone will just flock to our clinic, and we will have queues of patients who are kind of wanting to do this, because nobody else could provide such a service. But that unfortunately did not happen, right? So because there is obviously data to suggest that in healthcare, awareness is a challenge, right? And it's something that we all have learned with COVID. Everyone knew, right, that there will be a wave 2, and we need to kind of follow social distancing measures, but it was not done. So constantly doing awareness and community engagement activities is something that we have been wanting to do it. And now, as we have now scaled, most of the grants that we are now taking is actually, so we've kind of bifurcated that the grant is largely on community awareness activities, while the the commercial capital largely comes on the service delivery component of things, right? But again, we are very clear that both of them have to complement each other. You can't do all awareness and not provide any service, or you can't have build a great clinic with no community awareness activities. And then this can be targeted to specific populations that we do. So now with mother child, maybe TB coming in soon, and non-communicable diseases are some of the key areas on the outreach side that we attack.
Great. One quick question before I go to some of the comments. Do you get an opportunity to partner with government in any way?
Yes. So right now we are partnering, especially in in a pre-COVID world. I think there was not too much appreciation of our work, right? But in a post-COVID world, I think there is also more focus on primary care systems and this thing. So we now are working with actually 7 state governments through some of our partners to provide home-based isolation support for COVID patients, right, across 7 states in the country. So that's a large-scale government project that we are doing. With the current, Ayushman Bharat and the health and wellness, center scheme that the government of India has, our center is very close to being a health and wellness center, which is there. So there are various amounts of synergies, but again, working with the government has its own, sets of challenges, and different kind of skill set is required. Our organization is largely geared to be on the private sector, right, and private side. So we have no aversions. But the natural synergy at times is missing.
Mm-hmm. So, one is the challenge of working with government, but also because they are in a way, the government is the largest distribution network. It's unfortunate that private and public cannot sort of come together. In a way, your awareness camps are also sort of delivering a public good. So at some point, hopefully, we'll all come together on a similar platform. So let me take a few comments, Jagdeep. One of the comments is, have you deployed any medical technology in your telehealth system? And if so, what are the challenges you are facing?
Medical devices, right? So I think we have, right? So for a doctor to be able to consult a patient remotely, while obviously there is a nurse on the other end, we use a lot of medical devices, right? Very specifically on digital stethoscopes, right? Because auscultations is something that many doctors are actually wanting. So we use digital stethoscopes that our nurses can operate and kind of record the auscultation sounds. We also have some ECG devices that can be used, and standard medical devices like pulse oximeter, thermometer, temperatures, and all of those things are also there. So there are about 5 to 8 devices that we will use. We are open to having more devices, but the problem is that it has to, the doctors have to be comfortable to be using it, right? So there are many technology products, and we have also tried some of them, but ultimately the clinician who is actually using it, is not very comfortable many times to be able to use that. So that is kind of a key gatekeeper that we use. But yeah, I mean, open to the idea, and as we mentioned, we have no hesitation of using more devices.
Great. And another thing, Jagdeep, you just tangentially touched upon it, is the challenge of getting the doctors or the specialists to deliver this service on the internet. How big or how less has it been now?
I mean, it's much lesser in a post-COVID world. I mean, a pre-COVID world, especially with the regulatory uncertainty about telemedicine, it's many doctors who want, and doctors are very risk averse, right, and rightly so, right? Many doctors who maybe in their hearts of heart felt that is a good way of medium to provide care were not very comfortable joining, because they were not very sure of the regulatory clarity. Now with the new telemedicine laws coming in, more and more doctors are open and accessible to be able to do that. And this is something that we have also latched on to. So there are more doctors who are willing to come and join our platform. And also most of the doctors who have joined us also understand that, while there are so many other technology platforms as well that they can join, the end consumer or the final beneficiary of ours is something that we are also able to create an impact, right? So many doctors who join us, probably end up taking lesser amount of salary, right? Because they also can see a very visual impact, right, from their work through our website. So I mean, obviously they're not free, right? But there is a clear alignment for many of the doctors to be able to serve in the areas that we can serve.
Great, great. So, we are nearing the end of this session. So, a couple of more questions about karma and then a couple of learnings. What next? Where is Karma Healthcare going now from here?
I think something that we also realized, in a COVID situation, right? And I think, we ourselves feel a bit guilty that we should have scaled more, right? When COVID wave 2 especially came in India, and we were able to actually serve many more patients than we were imagining in a COVID wave 2, right? So I think there is a hunger internally to scale, right? I think, this is the model. I mean, while there are no, you won't have a perfect model, anywhere in the world, right? But this is a model which can be scaled, right? And I think, our intention is to, scale this up, right? 100 is a number that we have kind of put in for the next 2 to 3 years, but maybe now this is a number pre-COVID, right? So maybe we'll probably revise it upwards, right? Right, and that is kind of the idea, to serve more and more people, right? Again, being very clear on the mission, that we have, right? So protecting the mission drift is something that is critical, but that's the idea. And I think, we have kind of crossed a bridge to, to say that, at least we are confident that this is a model that can be, scaled.
Right, right. And this is geographical spread, of course, but also, are you looking at newer demographics, or you'll still continue with the same demographic?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think again, we are now actually looking to consolidate in the particular, in the particular states, right? So now, like, right now we have clinics, which are kind of spread all across the country, right? So the economies of scale, especially on the referral piece, right, that I was mentioning, and also, our ability to, create a pipeline of nurses, create a training, program backbone, will now actually look to scale in certainly prove a model at a high scale. So, let's say 100 clinics in 2 states, and then look at, opening now the other 100, into this, right? What does concentrated scale, do to a model like ours, right? So that is something that will have your care, whether it is,
And what is the external support that will make it easy for you to do this in terms of advice or mentoring or any of those?
Yeah, I think, as I think now the key challenge is on the HR side, right? I think, with the organization that scales, there is, 4 times the number of nurses that we need, number of doctors, number of managers, and maybe more than 4 times, right? So how does one create systems and processes, right? And it's a big leap, right, for us, and, maybe have a different, culture in how we operate, and that is something that is critical. Capital obviously is always a challenge, right? So that is there, but I think, how does one join in the mission, right? Is something that is there, because ultimately I think, more and more people who will kind of join and contribute is something that will be needed. Yeah.
Great. Final two questions, Jagdeep. One is, what is it that, if you were to look back at your own journey, what is the one thing that you would change? And second is, if you were to advise somebody who's also embarking on a similar journey, what advice would you give them?
I think, I think we've been chronically, and also I think, us to say that one kind of tends to not factor come in. So if we were to go back again, I think creating a system, also looking at what are the limitations of the ecosystem, and thereby raising probably more capital. And we could have raised a little more capital if we were something that one would kind of look at. We were too optimistic in our that will happen. I think we probably therefore raised or kind of got lesser oxygen in terms of capital to be. The second question is that what advice do enough to give an advice, but my thought for to ponder is to also see if somebody is working in the rural is to see that what is your underlying motivation to do this, right? Because it is a very, very hard journey, right? It is a journey which will test through all aspects of an individual's life, and all your skills and weaknesses, right? So at the end of the day, giving the answer to yourself that why did you do this and why would you still want to do this is a critical element, because one would not want to kind of start this and because there will be challenges, right? And kind of having that goal very, very clear is really critical.
Great. No, I think those are two very important points, and obviously this question of long-term view on this sector and the commitment and the sort of perseverance required to get things done. That's clearly, I think we are seeing that as a trend across various people we speak with. But the other point that you mentioned is very interesting, and not many people articulate it the way you said it, which is how do you capitalize adequately? Because you're not only building your business, you're also in a way building the ecosystem, the infrastructure. I remember when we were building our hospitals, I was always aghast that 20% of my budget was for electricity generation. And it was like a very big deal for us. So thank you so much, Jagdeep, for this fantastic conversation. There are many comments and questions, but in the interest of time, we will take them up offline, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them. Thanks again. It's been a fantastic conversation. I hope your ambition of reaching 100 clinics comes true fairly quickly. And thank you for everybody for joining in and asking your questions and putting your comments. If you want to see more conversations, please do join our YouTube channel, and there are other conversations. We meet every month, the last Thursday. Next time we'll have another innovator speaking about their scaling journey, and we have a mix of innovators and funders every alternate month. So we'll do that, and I hope that we will meet many of you again. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Jagdeep, for joining, and thank you all of you for supporting this conversation. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwin. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.